One of the incredible things about the New Testament is that Jesus gives us a simple hermeneutic for a life that honors God. In Luke 10, a teacher of the law approaches Jesus and asks what he must do to inherit eternal life. Jesus turns the question back on him, saying, "What is written in the law? How do you read it?" The teacher responds by saying, "Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." Jesus says, "You have answered correctly." This is Jesus' summation of Christian ethics. This is the good life, the telos of human existence, the most important commands in the Bible. So a lot hinges on a simple question. What does the word love mean in the original languages and context of these verses? That's the question for the show today. My guest today has a master's in linguistics, a second master's in comparative religion, and a PhD in the Hebrew language from Hebrew University in Jerusalem, where he lived for 5 years while he earned that degree. He is also the founder of Biblingo, an app where anyone, including you or me, can learn Hebrew or Greek so that you can read the Bible in its original languages. He is a biblical languages scholar and is literally currently writing Greek and Hebrew textbooks entitled Reading Greek Deeply and Reading Hebrew Deeply. His name is Kevin Grasso, and yes, he is indeed my older brother. Join me for a conversation about the definition of love in the original languages of the Bible, the implications for Christians, and a surprising number of references to Pokemon. If you are listening to this podcast, this is your show. So as always, please send me your thoughts, questions, and suggestions at brian@simplecharity.org. And if the show is helpful to you, please click a 5-star rating in your podcast app. Also click like and subscribe. These little actions help out our show a lot. Thank you so much for taking a moment to do them. I'm Brian Grasso. This is the Simple Charity Podcast, a show about learning to love generously like Jesus. I'm so glad you're with us today. Well, hello, Dr. Grasso. Welcome to the Simple Charity Podcast.
Hello, Brian Grasso. Thank you for having me.
Kevin, what are you grateful for today?
Yeah, so I was told that I can't say a work thing, so I will tell you.
Yep.
I'm actually quite grateful for this. I've been looking for a Pokemon card set for my son Emmett for his birthday. And I don't know if any of your listeners are aware of how hard it is to find Pokemon cards at retail prices.
Oh my gosh.
But it is very hard. And I found a thing, a cool thing. And so I am pretty stoked that I don't have to chase any more Pokemon cards at all these places because I found one. And hopefully Emmett will enjoy it for his birthday. So
fully enjoy it and appreciate it. I was at the Kroger in Cumming, Georgia, a couple months ago, and they had a vending machine box for Pokemon cards.
Yeah.
And it was completely sold out of all cards.
Oh, of course.
Of course. Yeah. So
yeah, no, you learn how these things work. It's just like everyone's always sold out except for when the guy, like I got there this morning at Target and the guy was like just finishing putting it up like as the store was opening. And, I'm in line. There's a few people behind me in line and, I get the cool stuff and then leave. And by the time I left, all of it's gone. It's like, this is why it's so hard, right? Anyway, so I won.
Yeah. So I wanted to have you on the show, Kevin, because you're a very sophisticated intellectual and have been studying Pokemon for many, many years. As far as I remember, actually.
That's probably true, actually.
So today we're talking about love. I will record a little introduction thing that our listeners will hear, and they'll know that you have degrees from various places and started a thing called Biblingo, which teaches biblical Greek and Hebrew. And this will be a reminder to all of our listeners to check it out, especially if you're interested in learning Greek or Hebrew. You'll learn more efficiently. It's affordable. It's fun. There's a mobile app. Check it out, biblingo.org. recently you posted on Biblingo's YouTube page a video about love and the word love and what that means. You're a, you know, in addition to being my brother, you're a scholar of the biblical languages. And can you just tell us a little about what you wanted to communicate in that video about the word love? And we'll start our conversation here.
Yeah. So, in that video specifically, I was really hinting at some at the difference in the meaning of the word based on the background of what that word meant, in the ancient world. So this is something that like I tell people is, when you ask like what does the word agape, right, in Greek, like what does that word mean in English? And we can have like various like equivalents, but really that word does not have an equivalent in English, right? It has approximations, and so it's there should be no equal sign. It should be the approximately equal sign. And the reason why that's important is because in some contexts it is going to not make as much sense. And so my point was that this word was used in the ancient world, and we see this in the Old Testament and other ancient Near Eastern cultures, as between two parties that had a treaty. So, sorry, I have to plug in. I should know better because I have my own podcast.
Of course, it's for my podcast.
I know. I'm sorry.
So
I'm sorry.
I plug in your computer.
Yeah. I would never forget for my podcast.
Would you wear a T-shirt in other podcasts?
I would wear a T-shirt, but I probably wouldn't wear my Spartan shirt. But I. Anyway,
this is gonna be like your most engaged content on YouTube.
Probably will be
after I post it.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, basically what we have evidence for is throughout the ancient Near East, their words for love would often be used in these sort of treaty contexts, where two parties in the treaty would like love each other. But if you think about one king loving another king, that's very different than love between a husband and wife. Now that word, the equivalents in Aramaic, Hebrew, and Greek that I'm thinking of, can be used in both of those contexts, right? So it's not that again, there's just like overlap, but it's not identical. So we wouldn't,
it's not the same word,
right? We wouldn't normally say that Trump loves, I don't know, Netanyahu.
Just go straight for politics.
Sorry, I mean, but this is the kind of context,
keep
right?
Going,
this is the kind of context. This is two political leaders, right? And we wouldn't say like, oh, they love each other. If we did say that, we wouldn't.
Some might say that, but
what we would mean by that would not be simply that they have like a treaty, an agreement of some sort, right? And so the thing is that like when you had these in the ancient world, you often had these treaties between a suzerain and a vassal king, basically big king, little king. Okay, so like big king, suzerain, vassal king is the little king, and the little king would be required to show loyalty to the big king, right? And that was expressed like by the word love. So all that to say, in Deuteronomy, there is love language used between Yahweh and the people of Israel. And what scholars have noticed is that the Deuteronomy itself is very similar to these ancient Near Eastern treaties. And so there is this agreement, this treaty, covenant, whatever you want to call it, between the suzerain king, the big king, and the vassal king, the big king being Yahweh, the little king being Israel. And the way it works is if the big king loves the little king, the big king will provide for the little king. If the little king loves the little king will be faithful to obey and do whatever the big king says. Right? And so that's how it works.
So there's like a hierarchical implication there. So that would be kind of like a parent-child relationship.
Correct. Correct. But the point here is that the love that we see between God and his people is like there's all this background, right, about treaties and how they work in the ancient world that informs what it actually means for Yahweh to love his people and his people to love Yahweh.
Yeah, so let's go to Deuteronomy first, and then I do want to go to Jesus, and when Jesus answers the question, what is the greatest commandment? But to set the stakes here, in this conversation, we're going to try to define the word love, move towards a definition of what is God's most important thing for us to pay attention to and do for all of our lives.
Sure.
so I think there's like a superlative here and the importance of actually understanding what the word love means, given that this is the greatest commandment in Christian ethics and doctrine, and the word has been so sabotaged and hooked up with all these other meanings and attachments that might not reflect, I don't know. You're going to tell me if they reflect or don't reflect the original intent. But let's start in Deuteronomy. So tell me the Shema. And actually, Kevin, can you read the Shema in Hebrew just for fun?
Sure.
I just want to hear it.
So I'll read to you 4 and 5. So 4 is the Shema, and then 5 is the love. So Shema Yisrael.
So do Hebrew first and then English.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, bechol levavcha, uvchol nafshecha, uvchol meodecha. So that is Deuteronomy 6, 4, and 5 in Hebrew. I have an article that's coming out sometime, should be coming out on Deuteronomy 6, 4, on how to translate it. So I will tell you my translation. And if you want to know the reason why I translate it that way, which is different than every other English translation, then you can read the article. But this is how I would do it. Listen, Israel, Yahweh is our God. Yahweh is the only one. The normal translation is, hear, Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Some translations say, hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. So I think that the point of the Shema is closer to the Lord alone piece. It is, listen, Israel, Yahweh is our God. Yahweh is the only one, meaning he is the only God, right? For Israel. And then Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha is you shall love the Lord, your Yahweh, your God, right? And then there's these 3 words. Again, normally translated with
all your heart,
all your heart,
all your mind.
Yes. So
all your strength. Well, Jesus adds one.
So the Septuagint adds one, and Jesus is quoting the Septuagint. Or Matthew's quoting the Septuagint, depending on how you want to do that.
And the Septuagint is the Greek translation of the Old Testament. Is that correct?
Correct. So
it's what a lot of people would have read.
Right. So if you're gonna, again, you should distinguish between what Jesus said and what the gospel writers are writing, because they're writing in Greek, right? So there could be reason for them to just quote, the Greek Old Testament that they have, rather than doing a Hebrew version that, Jesus might have actually said. But yes. So then you shall love the Lord your God. The normal translations are with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. I think basically all 3 of those should be rethought. But that's
whoa. Okay, slow down there. Tell me about that. Why should those 3 be rethought?
Well, the heart thing in Hebrew, like heart is much closer to mind in English.
Mm.
So if you look at the context, the very next verse, these words which I am commanding you today shall be on your heart. So it's the same exact word, right? And then it describes what it looks like to have those words on your heart. You shall teach them to your children. You shall speak of them when you sit down and in your house, and when you're going on the road, and when you're lying down, when you're rising up.
Yeah.
And then you should bind them to your forearm. You basically should see them in all the places in your surroundings and be talking about them all the time.
Yeah.
What does that mean? It means
Pay
it means
attention.
you should be on your mind all the time, right? And so to be on your heart means it should be on your mind, right? And so in Hebrew, like, you know things with your heart, in a
Mm.
way that like you know facts with your heart, right? If I
Mm.
know something in my heart in English, it's like, okay, that's cute, like you know it in your heart, but it's not real, right? Whereas it has the exact opposite meaning in Hebrew, where if you know it in your heart, it's definitely true. So it's more like mind. Soul, honestly, they just didn't have the idea of soul, and in the same way that we
What's
do.
what's the Hebrew idea
So,
behind the word soul
so
there?
it really is about your desires. And so again, it's like I don't know what the English word soul means, honestly. Like, I don't really know what people mean by that. Like, I think
Yeah.
you can mean different things, and like it's hard for me to know without you actually like explaining. So could be, but really, like, yeah, it desire, like you
Volition, will, would
desires.
that be
Desires. That is
desires?
the idea
Okay.
with this word. And then me'od, the last word, is very tricky, because it's not like there are lots of words for strength, power, whatever. Just like in English, we have lots of words for
Mm.
strength, power, might, etc., etc. They also have a lot of those words. This is not any of them. And so, like, this word is not really used. It's normally used as like an adverb. In Qumran, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, we have some instances where this word is used to refer to possessions, and this would actually make sense in this context. After the section about like having it on your mind all the time, it says that
Yeah.
when God brings you into the land which he swore to your fathers to give, you're gonna get all this good stuff, and don't forget Yahweh when you get all the good stuff. So
Right.
the idea
Right.
could be that you need to love God with all of your possessions, because you're going to get all of these things, and you're going to be tempted to forget who gave them to you. Anyway, so I think that's probably the best reading of that word as well, which again is just not the same as might. But anyway, that's
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Heart was like your mind. So love God with your mind, your attention.
Yep.
Love God with your desires, and then love God with
your possessions.
Your possessions, your economic
the things you have,
power, and okay, yeah, I'm tracking with that. And then that gets into the Septuagint. When that gets translated into Greek, they add mind. I wonder if there's even like a sense in which like the Greeks, were trying to get at that idea of the mind that is the Hebrew word for heart that we've translated heart, and so they add mind as this. I mean, I think rhetorically it's very clear what's happening, and that's like the entirety of your being, the totality of your being. I think is what is being communicated. But it is interesting that the Greeks add the mind, which feels very kind of like Greek philosopher-esque to say like, hey, we got to make sure this word for mind, like we're rationalizing, intellectualizing our way to God, which of course we love to do in America and the church as well.
Well, I do think what's probably more likely is what you said first. It's just that they were trying to explain in their translation the correct interpretation of
the same idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let's go to the most important word in the passage. Oh, well, God, probably, but the second most important word is love. So So we're pairing love, into these other kind of streams and ideas, but what does that word love mean
Right. So
in the original
so
Hebrew?
this is my point earlier is this word I have can mean the Jacob loves Rachel, right? So
Right.
that's this same word is used, right? And clearly it's he has some sort of affection for her. It is
Yeah.
affection between a man and a woman. Okay. But in the context of an ancient Near Eastern treaty between two kings, this would have meant um obedience to whatever the high king told the lower king. Okay.
Mm,
And my point is that Deuteronomy itself is such a treaty. And so that
yeah.
is where um that is how we should understand what love means in the context of Deuteronomy. It means to be loyal and obedient to Yahweh's words. And we see this explicitly, right? I mean, it's often defined as obeying God's commandments.
Yeah. Okay. Can I frame it like this and tell me if how wrong I
Okay,
am?
okay.
Uh, so what's happening here is, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, or no mind, strength. So what's being said is enter into this covenant with Yahweh, and that covenant will have implications for your desires, for your possessions, and for your
Yeah.
attention.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that's
Well, you just translate it like that.
that would be like the message, though. Um,
Yeah,
it would
that's
get
true.
the point across, but you don't want to do that. Anyway, that I think absolutely. I mean that's the thing that you don't get on a just like simple reading of it in your English Bible is you don't understand people normally don't understand the background of the ancient Near Eastern world and how the whole thing is actually a treaty between two kings, right? But so Israel is a kingdom of priests. There are all sorts of ways in which Israel is itself a king like entity. And so, yeah, in terms of our responsibility, right? Yahweh is basically demanding from and Israel's um, all of their attention, all of their uh, desires, and all of their possessions.
Possessions.
Ultimately, in that context, right? It is um, so that they would not run after other gods, right? So again, like following
Yeah.
up on Deuteronomy 6:4, right? Yahweh is our God. Yahweh is the only one. That's the point. Okay. And so for verse 5, loving him is an explanation of the Shema. Of what does it mean for Yahweh to be the only God? It means that he has everything that you know you're exactly right about the being piece, but I think when we hear that, we often hear it um as sort of like our intangible things, right? So
Mm.
like our desires, right, and our attention, like that, those to me those would fit into like all of our being, but like also your possessions, like very very practically, like all
Yeah.
of those
Yeah.
are also Yahweh's, right? You do not give them to other gods, right? They are
Yeah.
his.
Hmm. All right, excellent. Well, I feel like we just did some really good work
Good.
on on this text. Let's go to Leviticus, and let's go to where God commands His people to love their neighbors. So what's happening in Leviticus, and then we'll get to Jesus, and then how Jesus, pairs these commands together, and then we could talk about kind of what we think Jesus is doing there. But what is Moses? Right, Moses Leviticus, saying in Leviticus about loving neighbor, and what I guess because neighbor doesn't have that hierarchy. Neighbor, there's a horizontal relationship. There's not like one party that is the parent and one that's the child. It's more of siblings.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think it might be helpful just to read the context. Leviticus 19:15 through 18. So you can kind of see. And if I can just say something about what Leviticus is doing in general, um,
Yeah, please.
like basically 1 through Leviticus is a story. Okay, it's not a list of rules. It's a story about how um, the people first entered into the presence of Yahweh after the Garden of Eden. So you have in the garden
Mm.
um uh them being cast out, Adam and Eve being cast out, and then they are not no one is in God's presence again, right? In the same way until Moses' time. And during Moses' time, obviously they build the tabernacle, and the tabernacle is built in such a way that it would remind them of the Garden of Eden. There's lots of Edenic elements in there. And so at the end of Exodus, you have this scene where the glory falls down on the tabernacle, and Moses is standing outside and he's unable to enter. And so Leviticus um, is telling the story of how Moses gets in. And so through 1 through 10 is like leading up to when he initially gets in, and then 11 through 15 is discussing like ritual impurities and things that would basically prevent them from getting in all the time. And then 16 is the Day of Atonement, where they're given prescriptions for like how do you get in to the Holy of Holies after Moses, right? This is the a ritual that you would have to do every time you go in. So then the next half of Leviticus is about I mean, again, this is like very, very broad, right? So there's you can kind of chunk this up in different ways. But especially following Leviticus 16 and the Day of Atonement, you begin to get laws dealing with how people should deal with their neighbor,
Mm.
and interpersonal sorts of laws. Okay. So in light of the fact that Yahweh is now dwelling with man for the first time since the Garden of Eden, right? How do we
The
live?
vertical relationship is the first half. Horizontal relationships are the second half.
Yes. Again, I think generally speaking, that's true. So Leviticus 19:15, you shall do no injustice in court. You shall not be partial to the poor or defer to the great, but you shall judge your neighbor. Lord, I am Yahweh. Okay. So there is this refrain.
Quick question for you. As you're reading this from your screen, are you reading in Hebrew?
That was ESV.
English?
Sorry.
It's ESV.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Honestly, I thought about.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Not even impressive.
I changed part of it.
That's gonna be the scandal. That's gonna be the scandal of this podcast.
I know.
Is Biblingo guide reads the Bible in English.
I know. Well, I was reading verse 15. And I was like, the ESV says, "But in righteousness shall you judge your neighbor." And I was like, that's a terrible translation. So I did change that part.
You added
because
to equity.
Yeah.
To diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Exactly.
Sorry.
That's what they were all about. Especially inclusion. Yeah. So the but the idea in the larger context, right, is different ways that you're treating your neighbor in different kinds of contexts. Okay.
Right.
In court, but also just even in your heart, right, which is your mind. You shall not take so in Leviticus 19:18 itself, you shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the sons of your own people. But you shall, again, that's the sons of your own people. It's just like your people. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
But you shall love your neighbor as yourself. So this is the sort of context that Leviticus itself is giving this command in. And yeah, so this kind of love, just to compare it to Deuteronomy, is not going to be the same thing, right? This is about.
Is it the same word?
It is the same word, right? But again, even in English, in English, right? I love you,
Yeah,
Brian.
totally.
I love
Totally.
Rachel, my wife. Those are like different kinds of love, right? And
Yeah.
and my son, right? I love my son or my sons and daughters. But the
I love Pokemon.
Pokemon, exactly. I love Pokemon. That's totally different, or not. Maybe it's just the name. I'm just kidding.
The same as which?
Yeah, that's the question, right? Uh, you derailed me.
I derailed you.
Yeah. So,
I know.
but here's the point, right? Is in this context, loving your neighbor is about treating them equitably and fairly, right?
Right.
Yeah. So it's not the same as
Yeah.
loving
So,
God.
okay. It's not the same as loving God. I mean, could it be a covenant without a hierarchy? Is there a sense in which this is we're a part of a covenantal community that has a set of expectations, and this, literally written expectations of how we're going to treat each other. I mean, there could be HR policies in a business that dictate how coworkers treat each other, but there is still this kind of contract. Would that be too much to read into this? That what the original writers had in mind was that this would be this contractual relationship of like we are bound up together in this kind of relationship that God has outlined here in the verses immediately before that text of love your neighbor.
What I would say is that if you say that, it's just not supported by the text. So I don't think you can. I don't think there's a good.
I mean, my question is that in the word love?
No.
Okay.
So you don't need the treaty context for the word love. And so I think in this case, it is actually not about the treaty piece. It is just about treating your neighbor, in a way that's fair, that in the same way that you would treat yourself, right?
Does it say that? I'm sorry, we just read it, but in Leviticus, does it say love your neighbor as yourself? Yes. It does.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that carries so much punch. It's the golden rule, but I think the reality is that most people, myself included, don't pay enough attention to all the people in our lives through this lens to ask this question of, how would I want to be treated by me if I were them? And then do that over and over and over and over again. But that's the kind of, I think, ethics that God is inviting us into. It's the golden rule, but it's an amazingly salient rule. I mean, it's like incredibly simple but hard to apply.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's we do a family meeting in the mornings with my kids, and one of the things we do is we go over our house rules. And the last two are treat people the way you want to be treated and love God with all your heart. And I tell them all the time, like, look, these are actually the only ones we need. But I, for my 3-year-old, it's helpful to say, like, don't grab, and those kinds of things. And it's helpful for us, even as, 34-year-olds and whatever, to have specific, like, hey, this is what this looks like. But this is exactly why Jesus says, like, actually, this is all you need, right? If you have these two down, then you're good.
But Kevin, who is my neighbor?
I'll tell you. There once was a man.
All right, let's do it. Let's.
Hi, my name is Melissa, and I serve as a Simple Charity philanthropic advisor to individuals, couples, families, foundations, and family offices in the Raleigh-Durham, Chapel Hill area of North Carolina, but also to clients around the country. If you're curious about your own generosity journey and would like help thinking through a philanthropic strategy with intentionality to discern where God is calling you to love people, to find excellent nonprofits to partner with, or to understand the impact of your current grant making, I would love to connect and share more about Simple Charity's philanthropic advising offerings. You can connect with me at melissahall@simplecharity.org. That's Melissa Hall at simplecharity.org. And you can learn more about us at simplecharity.org. That's simplecharity.org.
All right, let's do it. Let's go. Luke 10. Set us up for us. Give us some context. Jesus was hanging out with religious elites. I forget which ones. I always mix them up. Even after watching The Chosen, I still mix them up.
Yeah, so you shouldn't mix them up.
Jesus hanging out with Pharisees.
I don't know.
Sadducees?
I don't know what The Chosen how they do things. But actually, this is a nomikos that comes to Jesus. You can
and in English.
So it's lawyer,
teacher of the law.
Yeah, teacher of the law.
Oh,
and lawyer is the one in. I don't like that word, but that's what the ESV says. But interestingly, it is closer to something like that in terms of like the word, right? Nomos is law, nomikos is this word. So it's someone who knows the law. So this could have been a Pharisee, could have been a Sadducee, could have been anyone.
Oh, wow.
I mean, we don't know, right? So just to point out that, this is just someone that's learned in the law. Right. And those groups, Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes, would be the third big one. Not everyone belonged to those groups. My assumption would be that this person did not belong to any of them, because it doesn't say that. But anyway, so yeah, he asked Jesus this question: "Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life?" Again, I'm reading from the ESV here. Sorry. What is written in the law? How do you read it? So Jesus immediately answers like, "Oh, everyone knows how to inherit eternal life. You just follow the law according to what you need to do." And I think that is. I think Jesus actually meant that. But do you have to understand what he's doing, right? So Jesus answered, the man answers, right? "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And he said to them, so Jesus said to him, "You have answered correctly. Do this, and you will live." So the man, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you keep
going.
The
man.
Well, I want
go.
All right, so the man puts the pieces together. Correct. So this is not a direct quote from the Old Testament. This is someone who has studied the Old Testament, the Hebrew Scriptures, and then is like, well, in my reading, these two commands stick out. The Shema, super famous. Everyone would have said it like all the time. If you're Jewish, still do if you're Jewish. And then this other one from Leviticus that is, I guess you would have to piece together the fact that, the first one is this vertical relationship with God, this covenant with God. And then maybe he was aware of the fact that you just described that Leviticus is broken up and has a shift and moves towards these horizontal relationships with our neighbors. And he's like, of that section, this one stands out of loving your neighbor as yourself. It kind of contains everything else. Yeah. So would that be like the typical Jewish way of responding to that question at the time? Like, is this just common knowledge if you've studied the law that, these are the two most important commandments?
Yeah.
Or is this like an innovation?
Right. So that is a great question, right? And this is an important point here. So people at the time were very much asking this question of like, okay, let me just back up. There's a fundamental problem, right, with obeying the law. The problem is that it's not always clear what you should do because the laws will often contradict one another. So if you think about like the Sabbath, right? You shouldn't do work on the Sabbath. Okay, so there's one question of like what counts as work really, right? Like does it count if I do X, right? That's one question. But another question is, what if there's another commandment that I'm obligated to do on the Sabbath? Now that obligation would ordinarily count as breaking the Sabbath, but if I don't do that, then I'm breaking that commandment. So, for example, right? Someone comes to me and they're literally starving, right? I'm obligated to help them with Leviticus 19:18, right? But I'm not obligated to, or I'm not allowed on the Sabbath to make a fire. Well, I don't have any food for them. What if I make a fire and bake bread for them? Is that legal or not on the Sabbath? Right? And so you have,
and Jesus is encountering that specific example directly in his ministry and other stories in the Gospels.
Yeah, so there are these kinds of issues. These are the kinds of issues that they were dealing with at the time in general, right? And so there are problems with the law, because the law is
that doesn't sound good, Kevin. You should rephrase.
Literally, I had this professor in Israel. His name is Yair Furstenberg. I still keep in touch with him. And I took this class, Talmud in the New Testament, with him, and I have this like such a distinct memory of him saying, the problem with the law is it is insufficient. So it was in Hebrew, chaser is what he said, and I think I asked him later, I was like, is that how you would translate it? Because I have like quoted you in English several times, but this is the problem, right? Is it the law doesn't tell you to do like what to do in all situations. And so people started asking these questions. Well, what do you do in this situation? What about that situation?
You need a hermeneutic.
Exactly. So people were asking the question of what trumps what, right? And so very much, right? This exact question, how do I summarize the law in such a way that I can say like, yes, I have fulfilled it if I have done this, right? So some people did this in different ways. So my point is that Jesus is not innovative,
right,
in summarizing it in this way. That is not the innovative piece, right? We see the lawyer himself is doing that, right? So in Matthew's version, Jesus is the one who says, summarizes the law with the 2 commandments. But I would say that other Jews at the time, this is not new, right? Clearly, as attested.
But Jesus says, these guys are right. Everyone else is wrong. This is the hermeneutic.
Right. So
the hermeneutic is
right.
love.
So there's going to be other Jewish groups that are going to say different things. Now, all that to say, the lawyer asks a follow-up question, right? But he, desiring to justify himself, said to Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" Right? And this is
okay.
Go ahead.
Before we get there,
yeah, sure.
Sorry. Before we get there, is there anything in that else that is interesting about Jesus / the lawyer pairing these two things together? Because again, these are from disparate parts of the Old Testament, and so I guess like it's interesting to use the same word love, even from our previous conversation, acknowledging that there could have been different meanings of the word love in those original texts, but there's this parallelism here that's so clear. And so I guess, what does the word love mean, getting back to your original question here? And does the word love mean something different in the first half and in the second half?
Yeah, I think that I think that you're right, that the pairing, right, is obviously the word love. But I think that everyone would have known that the context of Deuteronomy 6 is like love to Yahweh. And what does it mean to love Yahweh? It is to obey his commandments, right? And then everyone would have known that the context of Leviticus 19 is to love your neighbor as yourself, and meaning horizontal relationships. And that sort of love is different. You are not obligated to obey your neighbor in whatever he says, right? That's just not the same thing. But so I think this is the thing, right? Is I would say that they just knew what was in the background of these texts, and so the word love absolutely is the thing that connects the two, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the word love would mean the same thing in both.
It could be as simple as just the kinds of relationships. Like if I say to my son, "Hey, love your brother and love your mom."
Yeah.
I mean, everyone knows what I mean by that, but I almost feel like this idea of a relationship is that bridge where it's like, be in relationship with your brother, be in relationship with your mom, and the parameters of that relationship are in some ways self-evident, and you can break out of that. But I think that actually feels like carries some weight.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know, what do you make
I
of
think
that?
relationship, like being in relationship, is probably too weak. Because
Too
it's
weak.
like it's not just in relationship, right? It is also like devotion, right? It is like it's not yeah, I mean, I would say like being like devoted to that relationship in and living it out in whatever capacity, right, you're called to live it out in.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense. All right, one last question
yeah,
before
yeah,
we move on. Yeah, so the word itself, love, in Greek, what is the word here?
yeah.
Because I feel like Greek famously has many words for love. C.S. Lewis wrote the book Four Loves. A lot of people make a really big deal of what the different Greek love words mean. But yeah, what is the Greek
Yeah.
word?
So like you'll normally hear the like agape
Mhm.
is that's a noun, okay? There is a verb. This is just
Mm,
the verb, right? Agape,
the verb of
yes.
agape.
Agape says so hode apokrites apen agape says kurion tonteon su ex holes tes karia su, etc., etc., etc. You shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, whatever. And so agapesis is you shall love. People have made a big deal about the different words for love, and especially with agape being like God love.
Unconditional
Yeah,
love,
that's wrong.
right?
So
Is that what that means?
just say it's
Okay.
wrong.
Oh no,
I mean,
no!
it's not.
I was afraid we were gonna go here. I
I'm
was
sorry.
afraid I was gonna ask some sort of like common popular thing, and you were gonna to debunk it live on our podcast. So agape does not mean unconditional love.
No, I don't. Yeah, no. I mean,
It'll probably make for some good reels though.
so
It was
so
popular
here's the
reels.
thing, right? Is the question the question, right? Is like if that were the case, okay, then what we would expect is like some sort of I just pulled up like all of the instances of love in the New Testament, right? And so Luke 7:5, for he loves our nation, and he is the one who built us our synagogue, right? What does that mean?
Yeah.
And that's not unconditional love. Like this is the Roman centurion.
Who is that?
It's
Who's the he? Okay, Romans.
Yeah, he's I no let me check the wider context. It's a Gentile of some kind who loves the nation of Israel and built the synagogue. Does that mean that unconditional love? Is that the same thing as God loving his people? Like, no. No. It's just like yeah. Identity in word does not mean identity in concept. Okay? So like just because or at least doesn't mean identity in sense, in context. Okay. You could make an argument that it means identity in concept, depending on what you mean by concept. But the problem is that what I would say is just that defining this word as unconditional love is too strong, right? It doesn't fit all of the context, and so
Yeah.
what you have to now. Saying that logically, just thinking logically, it does not mean that there are not contexts in which the love,
in which it does
exactly,
mean unconditional
the love
love
spoken of is unconditional. It just means that word is not giving you that.
In this way, I almost feel like that we're landing on a version of love that's kind of similar to the English range of meaning in some ways. Like, so what you're saying is there are times when it's this more intense, set of obligations. I would even say, if I were to say to my kid, love your mom, there are more obligations and weightiness there, and this implication of obedience because of the context. So I almost feel like, I wonder if we'd like in the T.S. Eliot quote, like, after all your wanderings, you'll get back to the same place and know it for the first time. Like, I'm like, whoa, actually, what is the word? What does it mean to love God?
So
you love God. It's actually not like a massive, it's a leap from English to Greek. And
so
Hebrew.
I think that is true, right? I think that it is much closer than people realize. But here's my point, is just like I said earlier. So the when I said earlier that we wouldn't speak of Trump and Netanyahu loving each other as lovers.
Can we pick a less tense example?
That's a good example. Don't worry about the politics. They're two political leaders.
There's just a little bit happening right now.
Okay. Give me another. I just don't know many political leaders. Pick your two political leaders, right?
All right.
You wouldn't normally say that they're lovers, right? And so this is the point, right? This is where there is a mismatch in context between and in meaning between the Greek and Hebrew words. So basically what I think is happening in Greek and Hebrew, right, is like there's a Hebrew word and it's used in this ancient Near Eastern sort of context, and the Septuagint which is translating the Hebrew into Greek, picks up on those, and they translate it with the agape language, and then that kind of picks up on the meaning of those Hebrew words. Okay, so it does go back to those Hebrew words. My point is just that, like, when you don't use the word love in that the English word love in that context, right? And so that is the context that we have between God and
kings,
God and his people, right? And so then you are missing something, helpful. Right? Even if love is the best translation still, what you're missing is the fact that this is a treaty, and you're obligated to do certain things, right? And that lovers make treaties.
And I yes, that is very, very helpful. And I do think there is a popular misuse of the word love in religious contexts that basically means warm fuzzies.
Exactly. Yes.
And this is kind of your video for Biblingo. What you're arguing is like, it definitely does not mean warm fuzzies.
Right. Well, and so this is the thing, right? Is that, like, I mean, even if you could say, ego agapo Pokemon cards, right? Even if you could say that, and it would mean something, right? What I mean by that is it means it would have meant in the ancient world, like, I have warm fuzzies for Pokemon cards.
I unconditionally love
exactly. Pokemon. It doesn't mean that, right? But let's just say that it means
I have warm fuzzies towards Pokemon.
Let's just say it can mean that's fine, like, whatever. But the problem is that then when we go to when we say agapo tonteon, right? I love God. Which one is it? Is it the loyalty? Is it the kind of love, or is it the, like, warm fuzzy thing? And my point is that, like, that you're right, that we tend to, like, have this warm fuzzy thing going on, and the problem is that we actually don't have the category that Hebrew had for treaty lovers, right? And so once you have that category and you realize that this is actually the covenant that God made with his people, you're like, oh, this is the right category in which to interpret love language.
Yeah. Super helpful. Genuinely super helpful. Now my baby is crying, so both of our kids are making features in this. Okay, let's take it home and land on the parable of the Good Samaritan, which we don't probably have time to fully unpack, but let's just finish out what's happening in this passage.
So Jesus asked the question, right? The lawyer gives the answer. He says, you have answered correctly. Do this and you will live, meaning you will have eternal life, again, which is another podcast discussion. The lawyer then says, he desired to justify himself, said to Jesus, and who is my neighbor? Okay? So this is where, like, if you're thinking about this logically, the question is, right? Well, let me just read it, and then we'll ask the question at the end. Does Jesus answer the question? Okay? So the lawyer is asking, who is my neighbor? Jesus replied, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among robbers, who stripped him and beat him and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. He went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he set him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. And the next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, "Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will repay you when I come back." Which of these 3 do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell among the robbers? The lawyer answers, "The one who showed him mercy." And Jesus said to him, "You go and do likewise." So does Jesus answer the question?
I mean, I think so.
I would say no.
I mean, and like in a Jesus Jew kind of way, like he.
Okay.
I mean, this is the classic Jesus.
But here's what you would expect.
Jesus way.
Who is my neighbor?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
you would expect is Jesus to say, your neighbor is not just your the priest or the Levite. Your neighbor is also the Samaritan. You also need to love the Samaritan, right?
Okay. Well, he said who was a neighbor to.
Well, that's what
the
Jesus
guy who-
asks him, right?
Right.
But the original
I mean,
question
it
is, who is my
Yeah,
neighbor?
yeah.
So the original
Yeah.
question is, the man is asking, okay, I get it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Who do I need to love? That question, right? Jesus could answer and say, well, you might think you need to love the priest and the Levite, but you also need to love the Samaritan. That's honestly
Sure.
how most people read the story, right? Is you need to love people that are
That's not how I read the story. I read the story. You need to love people like the guy in the ditch.
right, but that's not Jesus' point. So
Explain.
because Jesus says, which of these 3 do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell among the robbers? So Jesus' point
Right.
is who is the one who's fulfilling the command, love your neighbor as yourself?
Mm.
Your enemy.
The Samaritan.
Samaritan.
The enemy. The bad
Right.
guy. And context there. And like one sentence, what's the beef between Israel and the Samaritans?
Samaritans are the northern kingdom. So, right, you
Okay.
have southern kingdom, Judah, northern kingdom, Israel. Israel is conquered by Assyria in 722. Southern kingdom is conquered by Babylon in 586, 587. And then they're both exiled. Jews return. Samaritans kind of return, or Israel, but they're not considered true Israel. Okay? So they're like, kind of
Yeah.
considered this mixture with Assyrians and other groups that they came back from and that they started intermarrying with. To this day, there are Samaritans in the northern part of Israel. Okay?
No way.
Yes. And they sell it.
And there's conflict?
No, actually, there's not that much.
Oh,
I mean,
okay. Oh, good.
I mean, they just do their own thing. They're a very small
Yeah.
group. But Jews are those from the tribe of Judah, and Samaritans would consider themselves Israelites. Okay? So at the time, they were competing for basically the claim to being God's people. Okay? So the point though is that what you would expect Jesus to say is that you should love the people that are different than you. What he says is, here's an example of someone, of your enemy, loving their neighbor in the right way, hinting at the fact that God's kingdom is going to be made up of people that you are not expecting. Whoever does
so
it.
it's even more scandalous than, in some ways, it's like more scandalous than even the kind of scandalous thing he could say.
Exactly.
Like, he doesn't just say, your Samaritans are neighbors. He says, your Samaritans are more obedient to the commands of God than these other guys.
He says, look.
And this is the test. It's not ethnic status and ancestry. The test is obedience to the golden rule.
Exactly. Whoever you are, it doesn't matter. If you're a Samaritan, you're a Jew, doesn't matter. If you do this, you are loving your neighbor as yourself, and you are part of the kingdom, right? That's the radical thing that he does.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Do we know anything about? It does make sense. Do we know anything about the guy in the ditch?
No, we don't know. I mean, the assumption is a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. Okay, so he's a Jew. I mean, that's the assumption.
Oh, okay.
The assumption is he's a Jew, and he's in Jerusalem because he's worshiping Yahweh, right? And so he's just going to Jericho on his way back to wherever, and so I mean we don't know any more than that, so I shouldn't say more than Texas.
Okay, I want to play a little game.
Sure.
I'm going to make a statement, and then I want you to say that the text supports the statement, it contradicts my statement, or that it actually just doesn't tell us anything about my statement in this particular text. Does that make sense? All right. First statement. Our neighbors include, when Jesus says love your neighbor, the word neighbor includes people who are not in geographic proximity to us. Supports it, doesn't support it, doesn't comment on that.
I would say
idea.
It doesn't comment on that.
All right, because that gets thrown out all the time. I've done that, I see that happen all the time. Our neighbors include people who do not share our ethnic background.
Yes.
So it is saying that. Our neighbors include people who are proximate to us.
Well, yes. The question is whether it would exclude
exclusively.
Okay.
Yeah. And our neighbors are only people who are proximate to us.
I would say it doesn't comment on that.
Okay, cool. That was helpful.
Yeah. So just specifically,
because I think the text gets used all of those ways. Like I think the text gets used as love your neighbor. That means your neighbor, the person who's next to you. Yeah. Other people take the same exact text and say love your neighbor. That includes people experiencing global poverty. I've used the text like that before. I think Christians should love people in global poverty, but I think you have to maybe this isn't the way to make that argument. I mean, maybe you get that argument by talking about the Imago Dei or, God's, Jesus saying, go to the ends of the earth with the gospel and things like that. But I just think this text actually gets used in a lot of ways that for what I'm hearing from you are not actually what Jesus is commenting on. But he is actually, one of the things he is commenting on is that our neighbors include people who are not our ethnic identity.
Yes.
So, and that is pretty clear.
Yes. I like I said, I think that is, again, he doesn't have to say that, right? So like, again, if you like read carefully everything that happens before the parable of the Good Samaritan, he could have just said, who is my neighbor? Your enemy. You need to love everyone, including your enemies, right? Oh, very clear. Yeah. Thank you. But he doesn't do that. Like he makes the Samaritan part of the kingdom, right? And that is the move where he doesn't really answer the question. Like the parable itself is not an answer to the question, right? The parable is making a different related point. But yes, I think to your point, the word neighbor, this is again where like every single English translation is an interpretation, right? And it is an approximately equal sign. And neighbor does not mean in this context someone in your neighborhood, right? That's just not what it means.
They didn't have suburbs.
Like, I mean, this is a good example, right? The Samaritans lived how far away? I mean, at least dozens of miles. Okay. Israel's not very big. Okay. But they weren't next to each other. They didn't know this guy. It was just a random dude. And so this is the point, right? Is that the Samaritan sees a need, right? And he fulfills it, right? Regardless of who he's interacting with on the other end.
So, okay, I'm going to try to make the parable of the Good Samaritan be an argument to care about global poverty because I've done that for so many years and I don't want to lose it. So in their day, the place where this interaction is happening, and you tell me how much of a leap this argument is on a path. And that was the vehicle and the technology of their day of getting from one place to the next and where people would meet and so on and so forth. The place where that happens in the public square, the kind of pathways of the modern world are what we're doing right now. They're podcasts. They are, they are digital media and screens, and that has made the entire world tiny. And so to the extent that I am aware of and capable, I have agency to make a difference for people who don't have access to safe drinking water, people who are HIV positive in Kenya, people who, I'm just thinking about some even past podcast episodes we've done, people who are experiencing modern day slavery, this is our path. Those are the ditches. And I have agency and I have a choice about whether or not to be a neighbor. Is that too much of a stretch? Or do I need to find other biblical arguments for people to care about global poverty?
I would say this. I think that all those things are true. I mean, you need to separate out. Look, like, again, the problem with the Bible is it's not going to give you all of the, like, answers, right? It is insufficient, right? In this sense. Because it's not asking the question, that you're asking.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think this is the thing. Like, if I were to say, what is the text saying? Right. It's way narrower than that. But is it permissible based on what we learned from the text to draw XYZ implications? Right. That's what I would say. I would say yes. Like, I would say that, I would say that if you're going to make an argument for Christians helping the global poor, like, the argument is 2 Corinthians 9.
Oh yeah. I mean, that is so. I mean, it is it is a home run.
I mean, that to me, that's
like, we'll have to have a whole podcast episode.
You don't have to do anything else.
Why not do that? Yeah.
So that's what I would say.
I mean,
I think this. It's like, what this to me, what this argument is it is an argument about ethnicity, right? And it's an argument about, like, it's about two things. Like, one is, what does it mean to love your neighbor as yourself? Like, what does that look like? Right. And who can do that? Right. Anyone who does that, anyone can do that. And anyone who does it is a part of the kingdom of God. Right. So I think that's the point that Jesus is trying to make. So if we then ask ourselves, like, okay, let's take 2 Corinthians and say, like, we are obligated, then we can use the Good Samaritan to say, like, what does it look like?
What's the nature of that kind of love that crosses geographies?
Exactly. And
it goes back to the hermeneutic Jesus and this teacher give us, which is this hermeneutic of love, of loving God with everything, and then loving our neighbor as ourselves.
Right. And ultimately, the question is, what does life look like, right? In the new age, in the new kingdom, right? It looks like this. It looks like, you loving someone else who is not the same as you, who you are not obligated to love in any way. And in those ways, it is the exact opposite of, what people like, because people will say, oh, you're supposed to love your own neighbor, meaning the ones that are around you. But this is the whole point. The whole point of the parable is actually there's no obligation for the Samaritan to love this guy in the ditch, to love this Jew in the ditch. There is the exact opposite of obligation. There's an expectation that he would not, because they are not part of the same group. So if you think that, all I need to do is love my little group, whether that means, geographically close to you or like you in some way, that is the exact opposite of what the parable is trying to say. You are obligated to love regardless of where and who they are, right? That's the whole point.
Yeah, that's the point. So, yes, I mean, yes, and it doesn't maybe speak to some of the modern challenges we have. And I do think there's actually a common philosophical objection to, there's this philosophical idea of agapism, which is the idea that we're supposed to love everybody. And it's critiqued for its demandingness. And there's one scholar I know of who I really want to be on this podcast at some point, but she's probably busy and famous. Her name is Megan Sullivan. She's at the University of Notre Dame, who at one point in time was writing a book about agapism. I don't know if she ever got it finished. And I feel like that's actually something that's interesting to discuss in the modern context of, like, how do we deal with the complexity of globalism and the, demandingness of this ethic in the modern world. That maybe is a whole set of other podcasts, but we got to wrap up. And,
can I say one thing about that?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Thing.
But we can't get too deep into it because we don't have time.
Then I will be the last word. Don't say anything. Don't respond to me.
What? No, guys. I still have another question for you after this.
So
you go ahead.
Jonathan Edwards in The Nature of True Virtue made me realize something.
I was going to bring up Edwards earlier, so this is fun because I'm reading A Religious Affection.
Okay.
You told me to read it like 15 years ago, and I'm reading it, and
you should have read it 15 years ago.
Relevant.
But it's okay.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. In The Nature of True Virtue, he says that true virtue is like beneficence towards being in general, or something like that. And it's just like weird statement. It's like, what? But so I like, when you really think about it, everyone loves people. Everyone. Give me whoever it is, right? Hitler is the, like, prototypical bad guy. Okay. He loved some people around him. Right. And so this is the thing, right? Is that everyone is going to have some people that they're willing to love, right? Again, you have to like think through like how you define that word love.
I was going to say, I'm not sure if I agree with that if we have...
So it depends on how you define that word love, right?
a robust definition.
There is a sense in which everyone loves someone, right? There's a sense in which like most people love no one, right? Depending on how you define love. But here would be my point. Right? There are people around Hitler that he enjoyed, that he like, you know, would do things for, that he would express his, you know, love towards, right? But this is the whole point. That's true of everyone, right? Because everyone is in relationship with at least someone, and they are, I mean, basically everyone, right? The real question is,
you can't be alive without. I mean, I think you would like
right. The real question is, can you love, right, the person that is just a being, right? Beneficence towards being in general, like just by virtue of being created, do you love them, right? Because if you do, then that is what unconditional is, right? It is just by virtue of being part of God's creation that you would love them. Well, at that point, there is no condition like that they could or could not meet that would affect your beneficence towards them, right? And so this is the point, right? Is that like absolutely there is a resource problem with agapism, right? But there's not a like you can't show or display love in the same way towards every person. That is impossible.
That's right.
Right? But that you would like feel love towards every individual, right? In the same sort of way as being like a created thing, and therefore loving them as a reflection of the creator. That to me is actually just the Christian ethic. Like to love your neighbor as yourself, and to love your enemies. It just requires that you view them as someone who is created by God, and therefore just as worthy of your love as anyone else, right? And I think this is the whole point. Like the Samaritan did not have any natural obligation to love the guy in the ditch, right? And he did so anyway. And that I think is the essence of what we're called to.
I will let you have the last word there. Before I ask you my last question, I do want to get more scholars on the podcast, and I know you have friends, so I'm just going to ask you publicly if you can introduce me to your friends.
No.
So I need some people, some Christology. What's that? Christologists. Some Christologists, some you know.
Yeah, you'll need to just give me names, and I can give you potential.
All right, yeah. Just whoever's smartest and most famous. Kevin, what are you learning in this season of life about what it means to love like Jesus in your personal life?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, one of the things that I've been like really thinking through is just like, especially just with my kids, honestly. It's one of these weird things where, it's how do I get them to care about, the things that matter in life? You know, like I just think about, I mean, because we're talking about Pokemon cards earlier, it's like Pokemon cards are silly, right? But they like I want my kids to have fun, right? But I also want them to like love the things that I love. And so like Jesus, right? And I think this is like one of my big struggles just as a parent, right? Is like how do I show like a deep, robust love for God to little humans who understand very little, right? I mean, they see what I do, they see how I act, but it's very hard, you know, with like reading through Galatians. It's like, you know, it's like really hard to explain Galatians to
to a 5-year-old.
Yeah. No, I mean, even my 12 and 7-year-old, I'm like, well, and honestly, to anyone, I'm like, well, all these translations are not very good here. I'm gonna.
we're not getting into Galatians. This is different podcast.
I know.
Different podcast.
So anyway, that's what I would say is one thing that I've really been like, basically just been struggling to be a parent, and to show them, and I've been struggling with the best way to say, like, okay, how do I teach you to pray? How do I teach you to read the word and to love it and to do all those things? Yeah. That I think has been my. I don't even remember the question. I don't know if that's the answer to the question, but if it's not,
what are you learning? What are you learning this season of life about what it means to love like Jesus?
Yeah. So I don't know if that's something I'm learning or I'm attempting to learn. But that's one thing that's been on my mind a lot of, like, how do I do this? And if anyone has any good answers, let me know.
Well, this is super fun, Kevin. I think we should do this again if I ever have questions about what words mean.
That's what I do.
And I will go to you instead of Claude. And my message to all of our listeners, I suppose, is to love God and to love their neighbor. And if you do that, you'll probably be fine.
Yeah, that's great.
The invitation to grow this week is to reflect on a person in your life, a relationship that you have, and to think about the golden rule. What is one way that you can love them the way that you would want to be loved if you were them? Thank you so much to Kevin Grasso for joining me on the show. If you have feedback on this episode, you can reach me at brian@simplecharity.org. Next time on the show, a conversation about stewardship and what we can learn about stewardship from thrifting, composting, and giving. Have a great week. See you next time.